Thanks, Eleanor. Yep.
Welcome to the 2020 Neighborhood Ada County Highway District Candidate Forum. I am Don Day, the publisher of BoiseDev. Our BoiseDev reporters help Treasure Valley residents understand what's behind the changes and the growth that they see in their neighborhoods. I'm pleased to be your moderator this evening. This forum is brought to you by 16 neighborhood associations. The forum organizers are Deborah Mullner, Karen Danley, Linda Paul, Deanna Smith, and Diane Ronayne. American Sign Language translation will be provided by Sierra McIver and Lavana Andrew, with funding by LINC, the Living Independence Network Corporation. Thanks to you. What is the Ada County Highway District? ACHD is responsible for planning, designing, and managing efficient traffic flow and traffic safety throughout Ada County, except for the roads that fall under state or federal jurisdictions, such as state highways. Ada County is divided into 5 districts, which you can see on your screen. This year, citizens are voting for commissioners in districts 1, 2, and 5 only. ACHD commissioners for districts 3 and 4 will be elected in 2022, and you can see them on the map here. This slide shows the candidates running in each district. The office of commissioner is nonpartisan. Commissioners are elected by residents within their district boundaries, but they rule on issues countywide. This slide displays only the District 2 boundaries. Tonight's forum is divided into 3 sections, 1 for each district. We just completed District 1. District 2 will begin, well, it's underway at 5:40, and District 5 will start at about 6:20. This is a forum rather than a debate. We've asked the candidates to answer 7 questions posed by the neighborhoods. The candidates have had a week to think about their responses since they received the questions on September 30th. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. Our timer tonight is Eleanor Cheehee with the League of Women Voters. And candidates will alternate answering questions first. We will now hear from District 2 Commissioner candidate Rebecca Arnold and Alexis Pickering, who will each take about a minute to introduce themselves. And we will start with Rebecca.
Thank you, Don, for moderating this, and thank you to the neighborhood associations for having us. For a complete look at my background, I would encourage you to visit my website at www.arnoldforachd.com. As an attorney and former CPA, I have more than 3 decades of experience in business and budgeting and legal matters, construction, strategic planning. That has enabled me to work closely with other elected officials in the Valley on collaborative planning and cooperation. It's been an honor to serve as an ACHD commissioner for 16 years. ACHD is a very different agency now than it was when I started. In 2005, when I was sworn in, there was no Safe Routes to School program, for example. Community programs was kind of an afterthought, and not much was spent on that. We now have a very robust Safe Routes to School program, and over the years we have increased our spending for community programs. We are set to spend about $10 million in the next year on those programs. A lot of the planning efforts and public involvement didn't exist in 2005 either. Thank you.
Rebecca, thank you. Alexis Pickering, your opening statement.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much to the neighborhood associations, and Don, thank you so much for having us. It is truly an honor to be here with all of you and provide a little bit more insight as to why I'm running in this very important race. For those of you that might not know who I am, my name is Alexis Pickering. I grew up in Koosky, Idaho, and made my way to Boise to go to school at Boise State University. At times, growing up in Koosky, I grew up without running water and electricity, so I'm no stranger to hard work and working collaboratively with my neighbors to get things done. I made my way down to Boise, charted my own course, graduated with my master's in health policy. I found my passion working in public health, and it's working with communities on understanding all of the impacts that our policies and our land use decisions and our transportation system have on our quality of life. And that's what got me so jazzed about transportation. And I'm really excited to hear the questions and answer them and provide a little bit insight as to why I'd like to bring a public health approach to this situation. Thank you.
Alexis, thank you. And let's get into those questions. And the first one is about growth. What is your vision for a transportation system that matches the needs of our fast-growing community? And for this one, we will start with Alexis Pickering.
So, I mean, it's not surprising, in Ada County, we have a very car-centric culture and transportation system, and it's likely not going to go away anytime soon. But with the pandemic, we've seen the impact that it is when we have fewer cars on the road, making less trips, because a lot of folks are staying home, and just the level of comfort that comes from that. I've seen firsthand in my own neighborhood how more and more families and people are walking and biking to Albertsons or to the park, and just how incredibly important that is. And, nobody likes congestion. Nobody likes smog. We have to protect our air quality and our quality of life. And if we really want to learn our lessons from COVID, is we have to make it easy and safe for people to use lots of modes of transportation. And it's really not about, absolving car trips altogether. It's just really about making several trips and transitioning them over to walking and biking or using bus rapid transit. And my vision for transportation really would be a menu of options that would make it safe and easy for kids, to older adults, to adults trying to get to work, to use those menus of options as they will, and support all modes of transportation.
Alexis, thank you. Rebecca, same question to you.
Thank you. My vision for a transportation system is it needs to be a balanced system that allows all users to use the system safely and efficiently. And we look at that in every project we plan. We look at all users. We look at what the needs of pedestrians are. We look at bicycle needs. We look at cars, of course, because that's how most people do move around the valley, and that's how all freight is moved around the valley. But we do look at and plan for all users and take their safety into consideration. We do have to continue to improve the infrastructure. We have to continue to eliminate bottlenecks. We've eliminated a lot of those, and that reduces congestion, which improves our air quality. We also have a system where we work with the schools to identify what their preferred routes for children to walk and bike to school, and we've improved safe routes to school for those children. We also have implemented a low-stress bicycle network to encourage bicycling on streets where there are fewer cars, and safety is a much higher priority. We also need a transit system. ACHD plays a supporting role to Valley Regional Transit, and we plan cooperatively with VRT for their transit facilities. For example, the State Street Traffic and Transit Operation Plan was a cooperative plan that was adopted by Boise City, VRT, and ACHD.
Rebecca, thank you. This is a neighborhood association forum, so let's talk about those associations. Boise NAs receive many comments expressing residents' transportation frustrations. Do you consider citizen organizations such as neighborhood associations and homeowners associations as your partners? If so, how would you suggest engaging with them? And for this, we'll start with Rebecca Arnold.
Thank you. Great question. Absolutely, yes. We do consider them to be our partners. We allow extra time for neighborhood representatives to testify at public hearings, But even in advance of that, early in the planning process, we have an intensive public involvement program to solicit their input, to solicit their participation in our planning process to assure that we are listening and meeting their needs. Not all jurisdictions have neighborhood associations. I wish they did. Boise has actually done a great job of getting those established and up and running. But there are neighborhood associations, I guess they're homeowners associations in other areas that do participate in our planning process and do cooperate with us. But yes, they are very important players and partners in our planning process.
Thank you. Alexis?
So as somebody that works with communities in my public health role in my day job, I just know how critical it is that we have really great working relationships with our neighborhood associations. And I mean, they're the ones that are on the ground seeing the impacts and effects of these transportation decisions that the commission is making. So it's critical that not only are we, holding open forums, but we seek them out and show up to those association meetings and be an active partner in that relationship. And as somebody that works with communities on, increasing the widths of sidewalks in communities like Mountain Home and adding playgrounds, it's critical that, we have commissioners that walk and see that neighborhood firsthand. And that's something that I would be dedicated to do and really involve their opinions and their mindsets into seeing how they'd like to shape their neighborhoods.
Thank you. Now let's talk about allocation of funds. ACHD funding primarily comes from 4 sources. There's a graphic that should be on your screen. They are property taxes, fuel taxes, new development impact fees, and Ada County's vehicle registration fees. How would you prioritize ACHD's limited funds to address all of Ada County's transportation issues? And we'll start with Alexis Pickering.
So historically, ACHD has not taken the full impact fee on new development. And up until just recently, they've started to charge the full impact fee and raised it by 9%. But that, unfortunately, only gets us to pre-recession levels. So not only are we trying to make up ground on all of the years that we weren't asking for the full impact fee, now we're just back to 2008. So I think it's critical that we ask development to pay its fair share. And we're seeing a lot of, leapfrogged and scattered development. And that just puts even more of a fiscal burden on our existing neighborhoods because we have to go back in, and as ACHD isn't the land use agency, we have to go back in and widen those roads to accommodate that development. So I think it's critical that we are charging new development, especially as we're growing so rapidly. We're coming to a point where we're not going to be able to maintain our current infrastructure if we're growing at this rate and not charging that fair rate. So it's critical that we ask development to pay its fair share. We're working together with our cities on taking a proactive role to make sure that we're growing the way that we should. And although ACHD isn't the land use agency, they do have a considerable role in setting the tone for what types of projects we'd support, because ultimately ACHD has to support that neighborhood or that subdivision and provide that level of service that might not be attainable if we can't afford to put it in. Thank you.
Alexis, thank you. Rebecca.
Thank you. When it comes to allocation of funds, we do have to look at a balanced system. And we spend funds not only on infrastructure, but also on safe routes to school. We spend it on community programs. We spend it on the low stress bike network. When it comes to impact fees, those have in fact increased every year. And they did increase this year by 9%. We also have to keep in mind that you have to balance the impact fee with affordability. The impact fee is actually paid by the homeowner at the time they draw a building permit. So you have to balance development paying its fair share with keeping home building affordable. We also have to be mindful of the legal restrictions on how ACHD spends its funds. Some of our funds can only be used for maintenance by state law. Some of our funds have a little more flexibility, but many do not. Impact fees can only be used on arterial roadways to improve the roadways to accommodate the impacts of development. We can't fund transit, but we can be a partner with transit, and we do that. We work with VRT to accommodate their needs. We also have worked with them to try to increase their funding and find a permanent funding source for them.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about people with disabilities. It's been stated serve ages 8 through 80 and everyone is better served. How could ACHD improve roads, paths, sidewalks, and crossings for use by people of all ages and diverse abilities, from parents with strollers to folks using a cane or wheelchair? And this one starts with Rebecca Arnold.
Thank you. Complying with the Americans with Disabilities Act is not only a desirable goal, it's also the law. And we take that into consideration in every project that we design. We also design our streets to accommodate all users. One of the things that's been implemented in the last few years is we have a Americans with Disabilities Act advisory group. It's a citizens group to give us input on road design and evaluate what we're doing in addition to the ADA. We also, ACHD in about 2006, went through and looked at the system that we inherited from the cities when ACHD was created and put together an ADA transition plan and identified deficiencies in the system that we inherited. And we have been working towards fixing those in order to improve the accessibility for people of all abilities.
Thank you, Alexis.
So I love this question. As somebody that works in public health, I'm constantly thinking about how our built environment and our health system and our schools and all the things that impact health, how are they serving even the most vulnerable up until, folks that might not have a disability? And so it's critical that we design our infrastructure to support our most vulnerable and all users, really, because we all benefit from that. And too often when I've worked with folks in STAR or CUNA on, walkability workshops, we'll see a intersection and a ramp that was recently put in, but it wasn't at the ADA requirements and adhering to that law. And so too often they kind of, just because it's not on the forefront of contractors and sometimes the commission, those folks get left out in the dark. And so it's really critical that, as a commissioner, that I seek out that the ADA advisory committee that ACHD does have and really learn and grow from them and see from their perspective what are the disparities and the gaps within the system for ACHD. And I work really, really hard to make sure that those contractors and all of those pieces are reinforced. And we can't continue to have development and new projects being built that don't adhere to that ADA compliance.
Thank you. Let's talk about transportation impacts. Should ACHD take into consideration the impact of each project on the surrounding neighborhood's quality of life, including downstream traffic, safety, connectivity, air, and noise pollution? Examples include improving foothills development, which often adds traffic to older residential neighborhood streets, and improving suburbs or on peripheral farmland, which increases single occupancy vehicle commuter traffic and puts pressure on ACHD for expensive road widening. How could ACHD better address such impacts? Alexis, this one begins with you.
So I also love this question. So basically, I'm bringing to this lens, to ACHD, this lens of public health, right? And our roads are more than just roads. They're not just about moving people through cars. When we build roads, and they have tremendous impacts on our daily lives in ways that we often can't even articulate. And so it's critical that we understand all of the downstream effects and how that coordinates with those land use development decisions made by those cities. It's one of the reasons why I decided to run, because we weren't really having that holistic lens of how the built environment impacts all of these pieces of our lives, and how to protect the quality of life. And it's another thing why joining the Coordinated Plan for Good Growth is one of my biggest priorities as a candidate. We have to talk with our cities and our county on coming together with some main priorities about how we're going to grow and what those priorities are, so then we can actually work towards those goals. Right now, there really isn't a lot of that it's in motion, and yet we're facing unprecedented growth. So we're bound to make some poor decisions because we're not thinking collaboratively, we're not actually thinking holistically about transportation, and that's something that I bring to the commission.
Alexis, thank you. We're talking about transportation impacts. Rebecca?
Thank you. Great question. We do consider all of those factors in our decision-making process. And as commissioners, we impose conditions on plats to the extent that we can legally do so. When you talk about approving foothills development and suburbs on farmland, those are actually land use decisions. And ACHD has no authority to approve or disapprove of density, zoning changes, or land use changes. We do provide input to the land use agencies so that they understand the impacts on the transportation system if the land use agencies choose to approve those changes. But we at ACHD have no authority to dictate density or zoning changes or land use. ACHD has signing authority over plats, but that's limited to roadway design, and there are only certain improvements that ACHD can exact from developers in connection with those plats. The land use agencies have much broader authority, and we do advise them on what they can do. We do have coordinated planning. ACHD actually started the process of the Blueprint for Good Growth back in 2004. And that was a countywide planning effort that eventually died because the cities were unwilling to enact adequate facilities ordinances. The county has now started to revive that process, and I'm very happy to see that because I would like to see everyone back at the table and talking about the Blueprint for Good Growth again.
Thank you. Traffic calming is a top priority for neighborhoods. Vision Zero is a strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. Vision Zero acknowledges that many factors contribute to safe mobility, including roadway design, speed, human behavior, technology, and of course, government policy, and sets clear goals that will achieve the vision of zero fatalities and severe injuries. Do you think ACHD should use Vision Zero in its policies to address traffic calming? And we'll start this time with Rebecca Arnold.
Yes, I think Vision Zero is a great goal to try to achieve. ACHD does look at those factors when we design our roadway projects. We also coordinate with the cities on setting speed limits and law enforcement. And we don't just do planning up front to try to ensure that the roads are safe. If there is a collision and a fatality, we go out and evaluate whether or not street design may have played a role in that. We evaluate whether or not there are things that we could have done differently or things that we could do in other projects in order to lessen the severity of crashes and avoid fatalities. So it's a process that continues not just at the planning stage, but throughout, to always be mindful of safety. Safety is our number one priority for all users, and we've implemented a number of programs to try to make our streets safer. We also cooperate with the cities to design streets to the streetscapes that the cities have indicated are desirable for their individual jurisdictions. And it looks like I'm out of time.
All right, Rebecca, thank you. Alexis, what do you think?
So I would say that our roads and streets are designed for speed. They're not designed for safety. And, I've walked in my own neighborhood. As a candidate, I've been a guest at several neighborhood association meetings. And while I've been there, we had a guest, a police officer that was there, and he counted that 9 different people had ran through the stop sign. Meanwhile, folks were saying, we need traffic calming. It's safe for my kids to play. We have no place to go. And this is an older neighborhood in Boise. And so the reality is, our roads are not built for safety. There's a ton of hazards out there. And I think Vision Zero is a fabulous goal, and is something that we seriously need to consider, because we should be designing for the big picture. We should be reaching for the stars, and how we're trying to serve everybody. Safety should be our #1 priority. And I can't think of a better policy that would be putting that first, and having that be a guide for how we view projects and policies, and moving forward and collaborating with especially our neighborhood associations and realizing those projects.
Thank you. Collaboration between ACHD and other agencies is something we've written a few stories at BoiseDev on, and the Highway District has numerous partners to serve citizens' transportation needs, including 6 cities, Compass, Ada County, the Idaho Transportation Department, and Valley Regional Transit. How do you hope to work with these partners to advance the Ada County Long-Range Transportation Plan, known as Communities in Motion? We begin this last question with Alexis Pickering.
So I've been very lucky to be able to work with all of those partners through, representing public health on, intersections with ITD. I've sat on 2 Compass work groups, specifically the Rail and Trail and the Active Transportation work groups. I've been a member of the ACHD Pedestrian Advisory Group. And in my day job, I'm constantly working with folks of various government affiliations, backgrounds, and experiences. And it's only through that collaboration are we going to be able to dig in deep, get our hands dirty, and solve these complex issues that is our transportation system. There's so many players, but they all want the same goal. We all want to be able to be safe. We want to protect our quality of life. We don't want congestion. And there's a lot of really smart, wonderful people in those government agencies. So I feel like we should be able to work together, and that would be a mindset and a work ethic and experience that I'd be able to foster with those partners and start from day one.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Thank you. I have had the privilege of not only working with the 6 cities and the county in Ada County, but also with ITD and with Canyon County and agencies in Canyon County. And I value those interactions and relationships. I've developed relationships with elected officials across both counties, and I do stay in touch and keep those relationships cultivated. We also have joint meetings with the jurisdictions in Ada County. We work through Compass for coordinated planning. The Communities in Motion plan is actually a 2-county plan, and we work through Compass and work with ITD to implement that plan, and it changes. It's not a static plan. It changes as the land use comprehensive plans change. It changes as the vision of the land use agencies in the 2 counties change. So we have to be willing to sit down with those partners and listen to their changes in vision, and nimble enough to accommodate those changes. And we do that well. I also publish my cell phone number so that it's easy for constituents and for elected officials to get in touch with me. I feel that's very important because all elected officials should be accessible. I work for my constituents and the community. Thank you.
Rebecca, thank you. Now to closing statements. That concludes the questioning. Each candidate will get a time for a closing statement, and we're going to start with Rebecca Arnold.
Thank you. It's been an honor to serve for 16 years as an ACHD commissioner. And if there are those of you who continue to have questions, please feel free to call or text me. My cell phone number is 208-841-2530. I work for you, and I want to continue to work for you. I have established a reputation over the years of collaboration, of listening to the public, carefully reviewing the law and the facts, and making well-reasoned decisions while prudently managing taxpayer funds. And those things are important. My top priority is safety for all users of our system, and that's always on my mind when I'm making decisions. It's been an honor to serve, and I would ask for your vote on November 3rd so that I can continue to serve you for another 4 years. Thank you.
Rebecca Arnold, thank you. Alexis Pickering, your closing statement.
So I would say, our road systems and our transportation system is at a point where we can no longer do what we've always done. With the growth that we're facing and the gridlock and the congestion and the air quality, we have to have a shift in how we view transportation and the value that it brings and how it impacts all of those pieces of our quality of life. And as somebody that has dug in deep and has a track record of working with our communities inside and outside Ada County on having those hard conversations about how do we want to grow that's sustainable? How do we want to make sure that our kiddos can walk and bike to school safely? How can we make sure that our air quality is protected? Those are conversations and actions and policies that I've done from that public health lens. And I have a great track record of working with many of the cities across Ada County on transportation issues. And so if we really want to actually solve some of these things, we have to have new blood and a fresh perspective and a collaborative attitude to actually make those changes a reality.
Thank you, Alexis and Rebecca, for participating in tonight's Neighborhood Ada County Highway District Candidate Forum. I learned a lot. Links to this forum will be posted by the sponsoring neighborhood associations on Facebook at Neighborhood ACHD Candidate Forum at idahoptv.org and at boisedev.com. I'd like to remind our viewers to please vote on or before Tuesday, November 3rd. If you live in a district that is electing an ACHD commissioner this year, you will find the race towards the end of your ballot. And for those of you watching live, our District 5 Commissioner Forum will begin in a few minutes.
Thanks, John.